Supreme Court as the primary interpreter of the Constitution. Without this case, the Supreme Court would just be sitting there with no real power. Imagine a referee with no whistle. This case solidified that the U.S. Constitution is actual law, not just a bunch of fancy ideals and principles that sound good. McCulloch v. Maryland, decided in 1819. Can the states check the feds? Now, let's remember that although it was the United States of America, the country was very much functioning like a whole bunch of separate countries that came together every once in a while for brunch or cocktails. The United States government created a national bank, and Maryland didn't like it. So Maryland tried to tax the bank out of existence. One of the bank's cashiers, McCulloch, refused to pay the tax, and in turn, Maryland sued McCulloch to pay the tax. The Supreme Court ruled that Congress has powers beyond what's directly written in the Constitution, like creating a national bank. If Congress has the clear power in the Constitution to lay and collect taxes, borrow money, and regulate trade, then establishing a national bank is a natural extension of those powers. Also, states can't tax or interfere with the federal operations. This case basically said the federal government isn't just strong, it's strong. It also says that Congress holds the purse, meaning Congress decides where our money goes and what it's used for. And this is something we still argue about to this day. Youngstown v. Sawyer, decided in 1952, tells us when presidents overstep their powers. During the Korean War, steel workers were going on strike, and President Truman was afraid that this would hurt the war effort. So he ordered the federal government to seize the steel mills in order to keep them running. But see, there's nowhere in the Constitution that gives the president the authority to seize private property. And with his executive order, he had overstepped congressional powers. The Supreme Court said, nope, the president isn't a king, and he can't take private property without Congress's approval. Basically, the court had to remind the president that war doesn't give him unlimited power. United States v. Nixon, decided in 1974, lets us know that no one is above the law. President Nixon was caught up in the Watergate scandal, where people in his campaign broke into Democratic offices and spied on his opponents. When investigators demanded secret White House recordings, Nixon refused to hand them over and claimed that he had executive privilege. No, neither the doctrine of separation of powers nor the generalized need for confidentiality of high-level communications without more can sustain an absolute, unqualified presidential privilege of immunity from judicial process under all circumstances. A lot of fancy words, but basically, the Supreme Court ruled against him and said executive privilege doesn't mean you get to hide evidence of a crime. Nixon handed over the tapes and just days later resigned from the office of the president. So even the president can't cover up crimes. Checks and balances for the win, right? So the next time you hear someone say the president can do whatever they want, just remember, separation of powers says otherwise until it doesn't. These cases remind us that no branch is all powerful, and that's on checks and balances. Were you here for class? Drop the scales of justice in the comments to let me know, and also let me know, how do you feel the Supreme Court's decision in Trump v. United States will change the meaning of checks and balances? If you learned something today, hit that follow button. Class is in session every week. Next time, we're diving into civil liberties and how the Reconstruction era shaped American rights, because, spoiler alert, the fight for freedom didn't end with the Civil War. All right, class, buckle up.